God has revealed himself to the Jewish people and the world at large, and every single creature and being knows that God is the creator of the world, the one who runs the whole world at every moment of creation. And because of that knowledge, every single creature is going to want to only do for God. This week our Torah starts the fourth book. The fourth book is the book of Bamidbar. If we open up an English Chumash, the translation is going to be Numbers. Yet any of us who even have a simple Hebrew look at the word Bamidbar and we know Bamidbar means in the wilderness. So why the change of name? We'll definitely get to that very soon. But just to give us a little recap, the end of the second book of our 5 books of Moses, the end of book of Shemot, gives us the mandate and the commandments of God to the Jewish people, specifically to Moses, to build the Mishkan, this portable temple for them that they're going to use while they're traveling in the wilderness. That was a blueprint for the grand temple that was going to be built in Jerusalem. That was the end of Exodus, the book of Exodus. The whole third book of our Torah deals with primarily the laws of the Levi'im and the Kohanim that they would do for their service in the temple, which was mandated to build at the end of the second book, at the end of Shemot. Now the Torah, in the beginning of the fourth book, in the fourth book of Bamidbar, goes back to speaking about the Jewish nation in its national reality. It's coming back. They're going to be traveling. They're going to be wandering for 40 years in the wilderness. And how are they to act? That's what is going to be spoken about now. The first commandment in this book, we see it right away at the second verse of our Torah portion, right away goes and tells the Jewish people to take and to make a census. Count how many Jews are there. Count them for their families, for their tribe, and as a total population of the Jewish nation. And this Rabbi Samson Raphael Hirsch, he gives in his introduction to the book of Bamidbar, he says it shows us the tremendous importance of being counted. It is twofold. He says, firstly, a person has to know how important they are, how individual they are, how each and every person has their specific and special mission in this world. Nobody can fulfill it if it was not you to fulfill it. And that's our individuality. And Judaism prides over individuality. We are all supposed to be unique and independent. Yet at the other part, a person has to know, especially a Jew has to know, that when we are being counted, we're being counted not only as individuals, but also as part of a family, part of a tribe, and part of a community. We need to be individual and have our own missions, even, so to say, on a selfish level. I use that as a very bad word, but there's that aspect also. We need to take care of ourselves, take care of our families. But there's also part of being counted as part of the community, which is also very important, part of the Jewish community as well. And that's what the Torah goes to right in the beginning. Now this evening, you're all in for a lucky treat. And we're going to speak about something which is not always spoken about. A lot are very hesitant to speak about such topics. Yet, with the help of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and in the merit of the Zera Shimshon, we're going to get to the bottom of something which deep down all of us ask ourselves and try to not ever ask why. And this is the concept. I'm going to read, before I get into that depth, I'm going to read the first 2 verses of our Torah portion, and then we're going to jump right into this sensitive topic. It says as follows, chapter 1, verse 1 in Bamidbar. Vaydaber Adonai el Moshe במדבר סיני באוהל מועד, באחד לחודש השני בשנה השנית לצאתם, מארץ מצרים לאמור. God comes and he speaks to Moses in the wilderness at the tent of meeting place. And this was the first day of the second month in the second year since they left Egypt, which, if we calculate, is exactly 13 months. The Torah counts the months from Nisan, and today the Torah was speaking about the first day of Iyar. So that is when God comes and approaches Moses. What does he tell them? He gives them the mandate. He gives them the commandment. Se'u et rosh kol adat b'nei Yisrael le'mishpechotam levet avotam b'mispar shemot kol zachar legulgilotam. First start by counting the Jewish people. Count each and every one to their family and to their tribe. And now we speak about how is a person counted? Does a person go after their father's family or their mother's family? Well, the Torah is telling us that we're supposed to count them lemishpechotam levet avotam. Count each and every Jew and trace them back to their father's home, and that's how you're going to know which family they are part of. So the Torah is now coming and telling us that heritage and lineage, as we say in Hebrew, yichus, is dependent and comes from one's father. Now that, the Zera Shimshon is going to challenge and say that goes against something basic that we all know, yet we might not know why. The Jewish religion, as we know, is a religion that goes based on and is decided by our mother. It's a matrilineal descent concept. This is the way our Torah tells it to us. Yet the daunting question that we all have one time in our lives have asked is why? Why does it work that when it comes to realms of religion, we're matrilineal, but when it comes to heritage and lineage, we go after the father? So I think what we need to do, this is before even going into the Zera Shimshon, is really understand why are we a religion based on the Torah that is of matrilineal descent. So, if we go to the end of the second portion of Deuteronomy, in the book of Deuteronomy, the book of Devarim, Parashat Vet Hanan, right at the end of the Torah portion of Parashat Vet Hanan, and I'll quote, we are in Deuteronomy chapter 7, verses 1 to 5. That's when it speaks about the prohibition of when we are going to enter the land of Israel, not to marry into the other nations. I'm going to read to you verse 3 and 4. Verse 3 says as follows, Velo tithaten bam, don't marry into them. Bitecha lo titen livno, do not give your daughter to the goyim's son. Uvito lo tikach levincha, and the goyim's daughter, the goya, don't take as a wife for your son. Now look at the fourth verse. The fourth verse says, Ki yasir et bincha me'aharai, when he will remove your son from me, ve'avdu Elohim acharim, and make him go worship other gods, ve'hara'af Adonai bachem vishmidecha maher, and then God will, has v'shalom, come and destroy you from the land that you have come to. So if we look at these verses, and it might be a little bit deep to psychoanalyze right now, but the Talmud in Masechet Kiddushin, page 68b, harps upon these two verses and proves from these verses that we are of matrilineal descent. How? This might be a little deep, but try to focus. In the third verse it says, don't give your daughter and don't take their daughter for your son, right? Then it comes and says, so that was like a dual, it was dual. It was don't give and don't take. However, in the fourth verse it only says, when he will yasir, deviate your son away from you. It doesn't ever say anything about deviating a daughter from you, or if she will deviate your son or your daughter from you. So who are we talking about? It's a very cryptic terminology. We already know you're not allowed to. What are you coming with an extra warning for? So to make a long story short, a very complicated story short, the Talmud concludes that that fourth verse is speaking about if, God forbid, one's own daughter married a Gentile, that the children of that, we're not calling it a marriage, it was never consummated, however, there was still a child brought into this world. The child that came out of that relationship is Jewish. Why? Ki Yasir is talking about your, we'll put it this way, your Gentile son-in-law. If your Gentile son-in-law will push away bincha, who's your son? Your son is really your grandson, the son of your daughter. He is still considered your grandson. Don't let that happen. If it's happened, the child is still Jewish. But it never says it in the opposite. To say that if your son married or had a relationship with a non-Jewish woman, that's not called bincha, that's not called your grandchild anymore. So from that verse, the Torah learns that we are of matrilineal descent, and only a individual that is born to a Jewish mother is actually Jewish, and the opposite not. That is the fact, and whenever someone asks a question and the answer is in the Torah, the answer is because God said so. Very good. Now, there's another reason that's a very easy yet sometimes hard reason to accept. There's another reason why religion, the Jewish religion, is determined based on one's mother. And that is because, biologically speaking, a mother and child are much more similar than a father and a child. And now you may ask why, and what's the proof? Well, after all is said and done, no one, until recent science and DNA testing, no one could have ever proven who the father of the child you are giving birth to is. Yes, they may look similar, they may sound similar, but after all is said and done, the only one that we can 100% guarantee, as we say, put our blood on the line for, that you are the child of, is your mother. Doesn't matter anything else. Your mother walked into a room with a big stomach, and a couple hours later, only a couple hours, right? After a little bit of screaming and yelling, and some tears and some laughter and some singing, a baby comes out. Right? Siman Tovu Mazal Tov. Everyone was happy. Everyone knows for sure that when one is born, they're born to, and they know that that is their mother. And that is a reason that maybe we can sometimes more understand. The Talmud does not give that reason. The Talmud gives the factual reason based on the verses in our Torah. However, there are those that interpret the relationship and the correlation between a mother and a child is much more solid and sure, and that's why we go by the mother. Having that introduction, the Zera Shimshon asks, well, that sounds so nice, that makes so much sense, so let the lineage and heritage of our nation also go based on the mother's family and not the father's family. He says further, it was the merit of the women, the righteous women of Israel, who kept the Torah in Egypt, that the Jewish people were actually granted their exodus. I might say something now which is quite shocking to many of us, that in the entire time, during the entire time the Jewish people were in Egypt, 210 years, there was not one Jewish woman which had a relationship with an Egyptian man the whole time. The Torah tells us of one time, and that one time was a freak case. The Torah even considered it almost as a rape, as against her will. And this was Shelomit bat Divri, the end of Parashat Emor, we read only a couple weeks ago. Tells us of this man who came out and he cursed God. He cursed God because he felt rejected. He felt he had nowhere to go. His mother was Jewish and his father was Egyptian. This was the one and only time. And it wasn't even with her will, it was against her will. To show us the strength and the power, the commitment of the Jewish women to their families, to their husbands, to their children. And it was in their merit that the Jewish people were redeemed. So the Zera Shimshon uses all of that power to say, let's go by heritage and lineage, also by the mother of the family, and not by the father of the family. So the Zera Shimshon answers as follows. He says that there's a Talmud, the Talmud in Masechet Kiddushin says that a man of peace is one who determines their purity of their lineage. Basically, based on how peaceful a person is, they are able to display and determine how pure their heritage and their lineage actually is. So the Zera Shimshon says it's very weird. Why does it say a man? Why not a person, a man or a woman? Why specifically that a man's peace, based on how peaceful a man acts, determines the purity of their lineage? And he answers as follows. He says something which nowadays might not be so politically correct, but if we think of our bubbies and our zedis, our sabas and our saftas, we could really understand this. He says that a woman's occupation, a woman's focus in life, is supposed to be primarily on her family, on her husband, her children, her grandchildren, their well-being. If there is a strong hen, well, then all of the chicks are going to grow up healthy. If they're looking and watching over and protecting, well, then everyone's going to be safe. Safe physically, and more importantly, safe spiritually as well. He says, since women normally are taking care of their family, they're normally home, he says that women don't have an opportunity to ever have a non-peaceful situation. Look at that. Given the benefit of the doubt, women are always in a peaceful situation. They're always calm and collected. I don't know who the Zera Shimshon was talking about, but can you imagine? He says that the women almost never had opportunities to get into unpeaceful situations, so they never were put up with that test. However, men who always have to be out and about and make a livelihood with the sweat of their brow, they always have these situations where they could fall into unpeaceful situations. Their lineage, their heritage is based on how peaceful they're able to maintain their relationships in their life, far and wide. And he goes on and he says one more thing. He says, if we look at our patriarchs, each of our patriarchs has their character trait. Abraham, loving kindness. Isaac, judgment and strength. And Jacob, perfect medium and glory and truth. May I ask, how many matriarchs do we have? We have 4. Do any of our matriarchs, do we see any of our sages ever attribute any character traits to our matriarchs the way they do to the patriarchs? We don't see that. It's a good question, right? Again, the whole concept of midot, of character traits, and the placement of an individual based on their character traits is primarily by men. Because men are more out and about, and men have that vulnerability of falling into an unpeaceful situation. Women, according to the Zera Shimshon, are more peaceful. They are more calm and collected. They're more concentrated. They don't have that struggle of character traits the way a man does in the eyes of the Zera Shimshon, which is, I think, a fascinating insight Think of your grandparents. Could you ever imagine them ever getting into something the way maybe your grandfather would have got into? Grandmother was very different. And therefore, the Zera Shimshon says that the lineage and heritage, the purity of the lineage, based on the Talmud, is dependent on man. And therefore, God goes and he says the lineage and the heritage is going based on the man because they're able to set the standard. Allow them to set the standard because that is their test. He says one more thing. He says if we look later on in the 26th chapter of Bamidbar, when we're again speaking about all of the families, it refers to the tribes as, I'll give you an example, Har Uveni and Hashimoni. Just say Reuven, Shimon. Why the tribe of Reuven, the tribe of Shimon? If you look at the word, there's actually 2 extra letters in that word. There is a Hey in the beginning and a Yud at the end. Ha, Reuven, I, Yud. The Yud and the Hey we know is God's name. God came and he's giving this stamp on the Jewish people. He's giving this stamp and saying, even though it was completely in the merit of the women that the Jewish people came out of Egypt, but the men too, only their body was completely subdued and subjugated to the Egyptians, as Zera Shimshon explains. However, their soul, as much as they tried, always stayed committed to God. So God came and he stamped each and every tribe, no matter how pious we thought or we seemed them to be or not. This is when the Zera Shimshon speaks about the peace. Now, he goes a step further and ties into Matan Torah, Shavuot, the Chag that we are coming to now. And he says, a famous midrash, you might have heard me say this midrash before, that at the moment that the Jewish people were receiving the Torah from Mount Sinai, look how interesting this midrash is. They peeked into heaven and they saw angels serving God. But they realized something so amazing about the angels. They each were holding flags. The midrash is not done yet. So they peeked into heaven, they saw angels holding flags, and they came to Moses and they said, we want flags also. And based on that midrash is the reason why each tribe was given a specific flag. The Zera Shimshon says, what does that mean? Peeking into heaven, seeing angels, flags. What does a flag represent? So very briefly he explains that flags are an identity. Flags are something which tell people who you are, what you do, what you are part of. If we look at different countries, every country has their own flag. Even in the military has its own flag. Every division, subdivision, and unit has their own flag, which gives them a definition, which gives them an identity. And that's what the Jewish people saw by the angels, and that's what they craved. They saw that each angel had a specific role and goal. And they saw that they were all working in unison. They were working peacefully and they coexisted peacefully. They saw that and they were envious. They said, we want to know what to do. We want an identity. We want a mission. We want a goal. We want to coexist peacefully. So give us a flag. Don't only give us a flag, but now give us delineate our goals and our responsibilities, each and every one of us. That's what they were craving. That's what they were asking. But what's so important about coexisting peacefully? Why is peace the name of the game? We have to understand the way the world works. God said, the very last Mishnah in all of our Mishnayot says that God could not find a greater vessel to bestow blessing upon to anybody or anything rather than peace. Peace is the vessel which allows all of our good deeds, all our good intentions, all of our mitzvot, all of our Torah study to actually stay and give that blessing. A person sometimes finds themselves doing so many good things, but they don't find anything coming. They don't find any benefit. They don't find any reward, any merit at all. And they're waking up and they're praying and they're giving charity and they're studying Torah and they're doing good deeds. They're visiting the poor. They're giving to the sick. They're visiting the sick. They're giving to the poor. They're doing everything. But there's certain things in life which are not working out. Chachamim tell us, look deeply into your life and see if you are peaceful with the relationships around you. As soon as there is peace, there is blessing. The Satan, the evil inclination, thrives over confusion and conflict. That's what they want. That's what he wants. That's what his goal is. But our goal is to identify any confusion and any conflict is not meant for us. We're supposed to be mature and overlook that and try to maintain the peace at all costs. And it's sometimes heart-wrenching, very hard to do. But the effort put towards peace, you always see the merit and the reward for it. And that's what the Jewish people craved, and that's what they wanted. So we see that lineage and heritage goes after the man because they're tested more with the test of maintaining peace. And then we see that when it came to the giving of the Torah, the Jewish people saw what it means to coexist in peace, and they craved that. They were given the gift of flags, the gift of an identity. And us as Jews, thousands of years later, we are too, at our greatest capacities, try to uphold what it means to have a mission, a goal, and an identity, and try to live according to.